Nobody is ever going to agree on who an independent expert is. Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, those aren't my words. Those are the words of New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who, when asked why he doesn't have an independent expert review the numbers of nursing home deaths after a March order that he gave, which kept nursing homes from rejecting patients who had tested positive for the COVID-19 novel coronavirus, the Department of Health has numbers. An independent panel, according to the governor, reviewed those, and now people are calling for a review of the independent experts. And we've done a lot of shows, Bill, as you well know, on coronavirus and COVID-19, and even on things that various governors and mayors have done in order to stanch the pandemic. I don't really want to focus on all of that now. So this isn't really about whether Cuomo is right or wrong in this situation, or should he have ordered this move that he made with regard to nursing homes. What's curious to me is the idea that there is no longer any such thing as an independent expert. And Cuomo is basically saying, Bill, that Republicans and Democrats could never agree on who should and how to investigate any question.
I know we're not going to make this about Cuomo and the nursing homes, but he doesn't need an independent expert. He needs an accountant. A CPA would do. A calculator, actually, would probably do the trick. Part of this, believe it or not, in my opinion, is a little healthy. And I have to tell you, I'm a little surprised to hear a Democrat say that, because it's the Democrats that are always making appeals to objective science in a way that makes it pretty clear they don't know what objective science is. But appeal to authority has always been kind of the left-wing excuse for overriding the rule of the people and the will of the people. And this is a case where I don't know if they really want to be admitting that, because if they can't agree that there's no such thing as an independent expert who can determine whether or not he made a terrible mistake with by forcing nursing homes to accept COVID-19 positive patients, then what happens to the entire idea of the independent expert who's going to be able to tell us when we can stop living in our COVID bunkers and come back out and resume our lives?
Well, Governor Cuomo, in a sense, agrees with you that you can just get a bookkeeper or an accountant. Here's how he says it regarding the Department of Health, the New York State Department of Health. They report our numbers. This is a quote from Governor Cuomo, allegedly a quote from the Washington Examiner. Here he says it. They report our numbers. You can see what you want in the numbers, but the numbers are the numbers. You can politically spin numbers, but those numbers are numbers.
That sounds like a guy who's looking at some bad numbers. But enough about that. I don't know what the percentage is. It's something close to 50% of the total number of deaths in the country are from nursing homes, and the huge majority of those are from New York State. If he wants to say that requires an independent expert to prove that it's true, that's fine. But I think you're right. I think the much more interesting element to cover here is the idea of an independent expert. So since we're told that Fauci is an independent expert, or any number of other people, like the guy who made the initial model that predicted 2.2 million American deaths if we didn't do something right this second, which was peer-reviewed a few weeks later to be found to be utter garbage and in line with his previous overestimations of infectious diseases. If the Democrats are saying that, or at least one of them is saying that, no, we can't rely on independent experts because there are no such things, I think that's a tactical mistake for them, but a huge benefit for America and the idea of America. Common sense is derided by intellectuals because intellectuals are not very smart. That's why they're intellectuals. If they were smart, they wouldn't be intellectuals. They'd just be intelligent. Intellectualism is the patina that people of slightly higher than average intelligence put over what they do in order to seem like they're extremely intelligent. And it results in some pretty silly outcomes. And one of them is the outcome that believes that a group of politicians sitting in a room in Washington know how better to run the corner gas station here in Sherman Oaks than the guy that actually runs the gas station. This is the danger of elitism and intellectualism, and it's a danger of the appeal to authority, the belief that one person somehow, even if that person's extraordinarily well educated in that particular field, that person has wisdom greater than 320 million other people. And I can't think of a single case where this is so. And Einstein is the perfect example of this, the perfect example. And not so much Einstein himself, but the people who quote Einstein, his opinions on war, his opinions on ecology, all of that stuff. Einstein not only does not know more about war than other people, he knows significantly less about war than the average run of people in this country. And this kind of appeal to a godlike expert authority who's an expert on things like relativity, therefore is an expert on everything, is a function of left-wing thinking. And I'm glad to see that Andrew Cuomo has realized that it's all bunk.
You keep trying to get him into Perry Como's family. Yes, Governor Cuomo.
Cuomo. Sorry.
It's just something you can't let go of. I think it's actually charming and delightful. But here's the problem. When it comes to something like science, you could say, well, we don't want people to just succumb to an appeal to authority because we want them to continue to keep an open mind, to continue to evaluate new studies, new data, new analyses, and things like that. When it comes to government, however, my old journalism professor used to say, who's watching the watchdog? If you can't possibly find a way to, what's the right word for it, to credibly probe the behaviors of government, because there will always be a political bias in any team of people you put together to analyze it, then how can we ever keep an eye on what our elected officials are doing? Because, as you're listening right now to the debate over anything, it's the Republicans who are trying to destroy these negotiations. No, it's the Democrats who are trying to destroy these negotiations. There are no independent people who can stand back and say, you know what, yeah, the Republicans are doing this, the Democrats are doing that, and just evaluate it without a stake in it.
See, I disagree. I think there are hundreds of millions of people that are capable of doing that, which is why the press corps exists in its current form. It exists in a form to make sure that the millions of Americans who have fundamental common sense and who can look at two people arguing and pretty clearly tell who's grandstanding and who's not, those are the people that can tell the difference in this, and those are the people that have to be rigidly controlled by what information they get and so on. And I would just say quickly in my own defense, the reason I keep saying Andrew Cuomo is probably because I took a couple years of Spanish back in high school, and in Spanish, Cuomo means what? So back to the question.
Yeah,
there's a famous story about, I forget the politicians, but it must have been British Parliament, where they're trying to split hairs about this and that and so on. And finally, one guy says, "Gentlemen, we all know the difference between a live horse and a dead horse, so pray let us cease flogging the latter." It's that kind of thing, the same kind of thing that was that famous remark, I guess it was by the U.S. Supreme Court when they were talking about pornography. It's like, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. These kind of things sound like they're made to sound kind of like hayseed kind of things, but the bottom line, Scott, is that real intelligence and real truth almost always is exceedingly simple. It's not necessarily easy, but it's simple. E equals MC squared is how the universe runs because it is so elegantly simple. It had to be right, and this is what progressives are dead set against. They cannot allow unfiltered information to go out to the people because 300 million people, on average, will make a much better decision than one or two people who happen to be acknowledged experts in the field who can't agree on any two things anyway.
Well, Bill, I think that assumes that people are looking for a way to evaluate things based on the face of it, the facts, the evidence on the ground. But I think there's a really strong human nature inclination toward confirmation bias. As long as, for example, as long as Anthony Fauci was saying things that bore a one-to-one correspondence with the things that President Trump was saying, then the majority of Trump supporters were like, yes, this is a great team. Trump was smart to hire this guy and keep him on board or whatever. But as soon as what Fauci said varied a little bit from what Trump said, all of a sudden, this guy's another swamp monster who was planted there by the progressives to try to find ways to dominate our lives. I don't think people are looking to evaluate evidence. I think they're looking to confirm what they already believe.
Well, just to put it out there to make sure that it's said, the precise inverse of that is true as well. When Fauci joined the Trump press conferences, Fauci's a hack who's in the employ of Donald Trump and then being paid for by pharmaceutical companies on the view of the left. And as soon as he disagreed with the president, all of a sudden now he's a hero and a real scientist and a martyr to boot and all the rest of that stuff. So confirmation bias, of course, is a serious problem. Confirmation bias is where you basically select sources of information that agree with the information that you already have. And this is why science, when science is done scientifically instead of politically, is so powerful. Science as a means of extracting information from the universe is a remarkably powerful tool, precisely because it is built in such a way as to eliminate all of these psychological biases that we all possess as mammals, frankly. And when science is being done correctly, things like independently verifiable results, quantification, all of this stuff are designed to remove not only appeals to authority bias, but also, as you mentioned, the kind of selective bias and all these other biases. That's why science is so powerful. But when people take a method of pinging nature to get answers and then say, see, science is on our side, then they don't understand science at all, because science doesn't have an opinion. It doesn't have a political opinion. And the thing that's so interesting here, and this, I've said this many times, but I can't say it enough because it's just so important. It was a transformational event in my life when I was on the debate team in high school. And in debate, you have to argue a positive side of a case and a negative side of a case. And my senior year, it was prison reform. And in that year, I could find, and I not only could find, I did have 25, 30 evidence cards from various acknowledged experts with studies done from Harvard that said that the death penalty does not deter murder, that if you have the death penalty, it doesn't make murder any less likely. And in the other briefcase, I had another 25 cards that said, no, it absolutely deters murder, 100% deters murder. And I had studies from various universities saying that that was the case. And this was such a profound, enormously important point for me, was the idea that there is nothing, there's not a point out there, whether it's cherry pie versus apple pie. You will find scientific experts and gourmet chefs who will give you profound, deep, confident opinions about why one is true and why the other one isn't. And then if you look for it, you can find another army of people who will say exactly the opposite thing. So where does this all get to matter in the grand scheme of things? The reason that it should matter is because the entire idea of democracy, I'm talking about Republican democracy, the kind of country that was designed for us and handed down to us. The entire idea of this system of government was that if we make the laws understandable to everybody, and they went to an enormous amount of trouble to do that when they wrote the Constitution, then the wisdom of large numbers of people will outweigh the perceived wisdom of a small number of experts. And you know what? The people are right every single time. They're right every single time. So this kind of an admission on the part of a prominent Democrat, is something he might want to be careful about, because if he is willing to say, no, there's no experts that can tell us anything, really, honestly, then why is the lockdown continue in New York City? And when will it be released or removed or lessened? Because if there's no external expert to tell Governor Cuomo, Governor Cuomo, then you're left with the idea that, well, if Governor Cuomo says that there's no expert that we can count on, then suddenly people are left with the realization that, oh, so this whole thing just continues until you feel like it shouldn't continue anymore.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure most of our viewers can agree with most of what Bill said. However, I'm sure if you follow the science, you will see that empirically apple pie is better than cherry pie. We're grateful for the people who tune in to this. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the little Liberty bell to make sure you don't miss a single episode of those that are publicly available to people beyond our core membership, the people who make this enterprise happen. If you'd like to see all the content, not just additional backstage content that we produce, but the content that our own members produce. Heck, if you'd like to become a content producer yourself at BillWhittle.com, you can do that by clicking the big green Become a Member button. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.